G'day everyone, this is of course the reading of the short stories that were entered into the 10,000 subscribers competition for my audiobook channel. Fantastic, I'm still doing backflips frankly. I'm very excited about hitting 10k. Congratulations to everyone who made it through to the second round, myself not included, unfortunately, for the second competition in a row. I have got to stop sending this off to outside judges. If I judged them myself, I would have won every time. Anyway, okay, So I'm going to read about 200 words of each of the short stories, and you folks get to vote on who's going to win, go through and get turned into a proper audiobook with all the sound effects and music and whatnot that you're all used to. Here we go. From the Sun to the Center of the Earth by Daniel Moeijes. Most people lived in simple apartments outside the center of the alluring, expanding city. It was, however, not impossible to move to the centrum. There were squares all around the world where 2 electronic lists were placed. On the lists stood the names, written in the Emperor's handwriting, of people who would change positions. One letter of the people who were so kind and so beautiful that they were allowed to move to the centrum of Moscow. And one book with people who were so vile, gross, and shameful that they were sent to the other places to try again to be kind and to be beautiful. With excitement, Anastasia watched the lists. She had brought food to the elderly, helped a handsome stranger to find the way back to his apartment, and cleaned the mess of some teenagers who had defiled a statue of the stunning Emperor Alexander Danetskov. The kids obviously had been sent away to Topolsk to reattempt there to be civilized. Anastasia sighed, disappointed. Danistov hadn't thought of her worthy to be promoted yet. Nevertheless, she would not give up hope. One day, the god of the earth would notice her and put her close to the palace. Unfinished Business by Alice Brown. 2 years ago, Francesca had been in a terrible car accident. She'd nearly died. In fact, she had been clinically dead for a few minutes until the paramedics had resuscitated her at the scene. During those few minutes, she'd watched her own body from afar and knew that she was dying. Only one person had heard her cries. A man dressed in an old-fashioned double-breasted suit and a fedora. "What seems to be the problem, ma'am?" he'd said. Francesca couldn't speak. She just looked around and spread her arms to indicate the whole mess of car and guardrail and her in front of them. "Ah, that's you, huh?" He nodded slowly. "I'd go back if I were you. Ghosting ain't as much fun as you might think. You'll be dead a long time. You should take the chance to live if you can. Here, let me help you." And he reached his hand out towards her. The next thing she knew, she was in hospital. The man came to visit her often. At first she thought it was brain damage from the accident, but after she'd healed and gone home, he was still there. Second Chance by Chris Mendham. Midnight. Howard Trent's eyelids gained several pounds as a soporific miasma infected the empty cafe. A heavy metallic object clattered onto the middle of Howard's table, knocking over his tepid cup of milky tea, waking him with a jolt. It took him a moment to realize the heavy object was a revolver. The unpleasant end of it, swiftly pointed at Howard's head, obliterated all rational thought. At the other end of the gun sat a ragged clown, a maniac in a faded red frizzy wig. He reeked of unholy defecation and stared at Howard with eyes one crust short of a custard pie. "Mr. Bones is sugar in a world of ants," the clown said, his voice like 2 seagulls fighting. He stopped, rubbed at his face with a filthy hand, disrupting dried and flaking makeup. "No, Mr. Bones is an ant in a world of... No, Mr. Bones is trapped under the burning light of a magnifying glass." Howard stared at the stranger like a cat drowning. He became aware of a layer of thick, febriferous sweat beneath his skin and clothes. "Hope, my friend," Mr. Bones continued, "sleeps back at the hotel." In one fluent movement, he spun the cylinder, pointed the barrel at his own left temple, and pulled the trigger. Click. The Fourth Reich by Jade Wall. This couldn't be happening. Her cyan orbs took in the looming figure in front of her. Although it was merely a silhouette, a dim outline enhanced by the orange and scarlet skies, a faint glimpse of the uniform gave it away. That uniform. The uniform wore, presented proudly by those who left suffering in their wake. Merciless, pain-inducing. They simply weren't human in her eyes. To cause such suffering on a global scale with little to no remorse. They were merely tools to be utilized by that dreaded Führer to afflict torment wherever he saw fit. It was impossible to escape. The dictator, the very same dictator who had killed millions merely for their race, had won the war. She recalls the thoughts that swarmed her mind as she stood, looking up at the planes echoing with celebratory cries across London's skies. It wasn't meant to end like this. They were supposed to win. The Grand Alliance fell at the hands of the Axis powers, and soon living itself became a crime, as if she had any choice what race she was. Fleeing was foolish, she knew, and at the very most might buy her a little time. Emon by Dakota Thompson. Before he had become emperor, his father sat upon the throne. Wise and stern, he attempted to impart all the knowledge he knew unto his child, yet Pridius cared not for such trivial things. Pridius wanted to rule, and to rule with absolute authority. Unfortunately, the young boy failed test after test set out by his father. He wanted nothing more than to bestow the crown unto his son, but Pridius sought a wicked and vile path to power. Day by day, his resentment for his father increased. His outbursts of rage and hatred grew more prevalent in public as in private. Then, on one cool summer's night, his life changed forevermore. Pridius was atop his balcony overlooking all his father's empire, cursing the citizens that roamed the streets, tearing the stonework apart and casting it down upon them. Again he tore a stone from its home and readied his arm to hurl it down, yet this time he paused. A wicked thought grew in the pale moon's light as he gazed at the stone he had wrenched. Pridius hid the stone beneath his robe and entered his father's bedchambers. So there you go. They are the top 5 short stories sent in for this round of the short story writing competitions, chosen by Adrian Thirnwald, an English professor at a local university in South Australia. So place your votes in the poll below, and the winner will be turned into an audiobook. Thanks very much to all the writers who have entered this competition and the listeners, particularly those who have subscribed and added to the 10,000 subscribers on this channel. And of course to those of you who are going to vote to decide who's going to win this competition. Good luck to everybody. Catch you around.